President Donald Trump has said that the U.S. is immediately ending trade talks with Canada, and that is in response to the country's digital services tax on U.S. technology companies.
It was supposed to be a reset, a fresh page in one of the world's most stable alliances. But instead, it turned into a declaration of economic war. On a quiet Friday morning in Washington, President Donald Trump sent shockwaves through North America. In a move that stunned both allies and markets, he announced the immediate suspension of all trade talks with Canada. The reason? A 3% digital services tax, a levy Ottawa had long signaled and U.S. tech giants had long feared. Trump didn't hold back. He launched into the announcement with the kind of force that leaves no room for ambiguity. Standing in the Oval Office, surrounded by advisors, he declared Canada's digital tax not just a policy disagreement, but a blatant attack on American innovation, an act of economic hostility aimed directly at the beating heart of Silicon Valley. With trademark bravado, he promised that Canada would pay dearly for crossing what he viewed as a red line, targeting U.S. tech giants that have become global symbols of American dominance. But this wasn't just another Trump outburst. It was calibrated because behind the fiery rhetoric lay years of frustration. The digital services tax, first proposed in Europe, then replicated across the globe, has long been a thorn in Washington's side. Countries from France to India had already introduced their versions, arguing that US-based tech firms earn billions from their citizens without paying a fair share into local economies. Canada was simply the next in line, but to Trump, it felt like betrayal from a neighbor. For Trump, this wasn't policy, it was personal. Canada wasn't just another foreign government, it was supposed to be a friend, an ally, a partner. And yet, here it was, preparing to extract billions from American firms retroactively. That crossed a line, and Trump's response reflected it. This wasn't just about defending revenue streams, it was about defending control.
In a social media post saying he's ended all trade negotiations, trade talks with Canada effective immediately. He said he'll let them know in 7 days, setting a new deadline, letting them know in 7 days what tariffs they will pay, saying that the country is being very difficult. And so this is really a setback in what looked like it was an improving trade situation there with America's neighbor to the north.
The move to suspend trade talks wasn't a flinch, it was a flex. A deliberate, tactical maneuver designed to send a message not just to Ottawa, but to every capital entertaining similar taxes. Push the United States, and you'll face economic consequences. Trump turned a tax dispute into a battlefield, and this time, the fight wasn't about goods crossing borders. It was about data, power, and who gets to profit from the digital age. High-level meetings designed to produce a new bilateral trade pact by July were instantly rendered meaningless. What had been described as close to a breakthrough became, in a matter of hours, political debris. The warmth of Alberta has been replaced by a cold front of tariffs, threats, and economic uncertainty. Whatever goodwill was built in the sidelines of the summit has been overtaken by a familiar Trump doctrine that loyalty means little in the face of perceived defiance. Canada, once again, found itself on the receiving end of a sudden geopolitical pivot, and this time the consequences could be long-lasting. The White House doubled down, not with quiet diplomacy, but with open defiance. Sitting at the Resolute desk, President Trump looked directly into the cameras and issued a statement that sounded less like negotiation and more like a verdict. We have all the cards. Economically, we have such power over Canada. It wasn't just confidence. It was a warning wrapped in certainty. His tone was calm, but the message was anything but. This wasn't a call for talks. It was a signal that the gloves were off. Behind the scenes, his administration began laying the groundwork for sweeping retaliatory measures. Advisors floated the idea of fresh tariffs across key Canadian sectors, agriculture, manufacturing, even clean energy components. There was talk of tightening regulatory pathways for Canadian firms operating in the US, leveraging every inch of economic muscle to remind Ottawa of its dependence. For Canada, this was no mere political skirmish. It was an existential threat. The two economies are deeply woven together, not just through trade, but through supply chains, labor, investment, and infrastructure. A sudden rupture doesn't just mean inconvenience. It means job losses, disrupted markets, delayed exports, and political fallout. In many ways, Canada's economic heartbeat is synced to America's, and Trump had just threatened to pull the plug. This wasn't just about tech taxes anymore. It was about power, and Washington was reminding its closest neighbor just how asymmetric that power can feel when diplomacy is replaced with dominance. But the timing is brutal. Payments on the retroactive digital tax are due in days. American companies, from Apple to Amazon, are preparing to send roughly $2.7 billion across the border. For Washington, it's more than just money. It's about control. This isn't Trump's first tariff rodeo. During his first term, he hit Canada with steel and aluminum tariffs, triggering diplomatic standoffs. Now, history is repeating, and this time the fallout could be broader. Ironically, the US has already imposed a 25% tariff on Canadian exports, excluding goods covered by earlier trade deals.
U.S. President Donald Trump repeating his rhetoric over Canada becoming the 51st state, days after saying trade negotiations between the two countries have ended. This is what he had to say in an interview with Fox News earlier today.
Canada is a very tough country to deal with, I will say that. And I love Canada.
You have USMCA in play.
I know, but
You'll have to deal with it.
USMCA is no good if they cheat.
What does that mean?
Well, there's been things going on that we don't like, and things going on where they took advantage. And hopefully we'll be fine with Canada. I love Canada.
And then came the rhetoric. Trump flirted once again with the idea of making Canada the 51st state. But Canada isn't standing alone. European nations facing similar pressure from Washington over their own digital taxes are watching closely. The question now isn't whether the US can force Canada to back down. It's whether Canada, with allies and strategic patience, can withstand the economic storm long enough to shift the narrative. Because this isn't just about tariffs, it's about sovereignty, innovation, and the digital future. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more deep dives on global power shifts, and stay tuned, because this story isn't over yet.